I just print out the whole book, and then I can take my pen, my pencil, and I can diagram sentences. I retranslate things just so that I understand what's being said. Because if I can figure out another way to say it myself, then I know that I probably have a good idea of what it means. If I can't figure out another way to say it outside of King James English, then I know I don't understand it. And so that night, as the Sabbath begins, I lay in my bed and I am working on the book of Zechariah. Why I printed this up, I don't know. It's probably because after more than 20 years, I still don't understand it, and I'm just drawn to it. It was penned just a few blocks away when Zechariah went up to the temple, and the temple scribes then wrote down every one of his words, and when his words came true for in that generation, then they knew it was a verified prophet, and in fact, his grandfather was a prophet. Edo was a prophet as well. And so they knew the lineage, but they still had not tested this with time and with his prophecies. And so it was written and waiting for authentication. And as I was reading it, I fell asleep. I woke up in the morning, and it's a Sabbath. Don't even have to get out of bed. I grabbed my glass of water, took a drink, and my pen was still in my hand. The notes of Zechariah were still in my chest, and then I started working on it. Hours later, it was the early afternoon that I got to the 5th chapter, and I read Zechariah chapter 5, and behold, there was lifted up a talent of lead, and this is a woman that sits in the midst of the ephah. As soon as I saw that, I said, this is what Cohen was talking about. Because in some translations it says basket rather than ephah. But as soon as I read this, I sit up in bed and I say, this is not a woman, this is a fire. This is not a woman, this is a fire. And I saw something come before my eyes, and so I went back and I got up and I sat down and I began reworking everything that I was doing right now with Zechariah chapter 5, verse 1, and I start writing it out because I am going to put that in there. This is not a woman, this is a fire. So I went down after I completed that. I went down to the sukkah, and there was Joshua Cohen, who has his Hebrew Bible with him. It's all in Hebrew, it's not even in English. David Rodstein, who has his Hebrew Bible. Chaim Goldman, who is the producer, he also somewhat familiar with Hebrew, but he has the English Bible there with him. And so I go down and I say, I've been working something in Zechariah. I want to read it to you. But when I come to the word woman, I'm going to say the word fire, and I want you to see if you see what I see. And Rodstein said, no, he's a lawyer. He said, no, what is it in Hebrew? I said, I don't know what it is in Hebrew. I'm just looking at the King James. He said, well, he opened up his Bible and said, well, what is it in Hebrew? And I said, no, just listen to me. And he wasn't going to let me get away with this. And I finally said, all right, just shut up and listen to me. And so I began reading. When we got to that section, and then their mouths dropped open, all of them. They said, okay, we see it, but what does it really say in Hebrew? Rodstein opened up his Bible, and there it was, in Hebrew. It's not a woman, Isha. It is Asha. It is a fire. Right that moment, ladies and gentlemen, I knew this was revelation from heaven, because I could not have known this by any other means. To sit up and shout out, this is not a woman, this is fire. Every translation has been wrong, and in fact, what happened is that in Zechariah, there are no vowel pointings. It is like this scroll of Esther here. This was done for me in Israel, the scroll of Esther. just like the Torah scroll, just like Zechariah, there are no vowel pointings in it at all. Not a single one. And so you only know the vowel pointings by the context. And so back in the days of Zechariah, there were no vowel pointings in it. But the Masoretes put a vowel pointing, they put a chametz there, making it Isha, a dot, just a dot that makes it Isha, instead of Asha. Asha, which is fire offering. Now, I want to take you to this because, ladies and gentlemen, this is revelation for this day and time. Because once they put the vowel pointing in for Isha instead of Asha, no one could read it correctly. Every translation on the planet has been wrong, and even the Hebrew manuscripts that had the vowel pointings are wrong. Now, I'm going to take you on this journey, because this is a provision for you, if you have ears to hear, which narrows the field substantially. Zechariah chapter 5, verse 1. Then I turned, lifted up my eyes, and looked, and behold, a flying roll. When I saw the word roll in English, I assumed, and it was correctly, that it was Megillah. What is a Megillah? Well, this is the Megillah of Esther. He looked up and saw a flying roll. It's not a jelly-filled Bismarck. It's not a carpet roll. It's not a sushi roll. It is a flying Megillah. He sees it flying in the sky. And the angel said to me, "What do you see?" And he said, "I see a flying Megillah. The length thereof is 20 cubits, and at 20.62 inches to the divine cubit," and that is how all of the measurements are done in the Bible, is the cubit and a handbreadth of Ezekiel. But Solomon, who built the gates of Hazor, Gezer, and Megiddo, which are still intact today, excavated down, they still measure exactly in the divine cubit of 20.62 inches. The Ark of the Covenant, all of the table of showbread, all the implements of the temple are all measured in the 20.62 divine cubit, also called the Royal Egyptian cubit as well, but it's the divine cubit. And at 20.62 inches, he looks up and sees something that is 34.5 feet long. And the breadth thereof is 10 cubits. Now, breadth in the Hebrew manuscripts is a line cast about, such as the Temple of Solomon. There were two pillars out front and a line cast about of 12 cubits. Well, 12 cubits, a line cast about, if you were then to move it into Greek measurement system of diameter, dia, through meter, through measurement, it would be times 3.14 of the line cast about. So in Solomon's temple, those pillars were about 6.5 feet in diameter. This here is 10 cubits. A line cast about, which is 5.5 feet in diameter. And so he looks up into the sky and sees something that looks like a flying Megillah, but obviously it's not the scroll of Esther because it's 34.5 feet long. It is 5.5 feet in diameter. And then the angel said to me in verse 3, "This is the curse that goes forth over the face of the whole earth." The whole earth. And when I say the word earth, I know that in Hebrew it would be eretz. So it could be just the land of Israel. It could be the entire globe. Only the context is what determines what it's going to be. "For everyone that steals shall be cut off on this side according to it." And we see in the context, steals my words one from another. "And everyone that sweareth." And it's again speaking further in the context, swears falsely by my name is going to be cut off on that side. Like this side, like that side, everyone that steals my words one from another and bears false witness or swears falsely in my name, saying the Lord said this, and he didn't say it, they're going to be killed by this. So I'm very cautious when I say the Lord gave me revelation that I am to deliver to you. I will bring it forth, verse 4, saith Yehovah Tzebaoth, and it shall enter into the house of the thief, and into the house of him that swears falsely by my name. And it shall remain in the midst of the house, and shall consume it with the timber thereof and the stones thereof. Then the angel that talked with me went forth and said unto me, now lift up your eyes and see what it is that goes forth, that flies. Now I'm going to explain this to you. I am going to show you what this is. And I said, what is it? And he said, this is an ephah that flies, goes forth. This is an ephah that flies. Now, an ephah is literally a measurement. And it's usually measured with a basket, or it is measured with a ceramic vase, so that you get an exact measurement. And so when it says this is an ephah, we know the dimensions of it. It's not an ephah that's literally about 40 liters. That is what an ephah really is, about 40 liters. But this is a container. Now, I relate this biblically, as well as my upbringing. I was raised for a few years on an apple orchard. I worked on apple orchards. My father ran Pearson's Welcome Orchards at the corner of 44 and 66 in Michigan. And so I know what a bushel is. A bushel contains 4 pecks. A bushel of apples is 4 pecks. But yet, when we see that Yeshua says, and it's in King James, no one takes a candle and hides it under a bushel. He's not talking about 4 pecks of apples. He's talking about a container. The size of the container is irrelevant. It's just talking about he doesn't hide it under a container. Here, it's an ephah used not as 40-liter measurement, but as a container. It's a container that flies, 34 and a half feet long, 5.5 feet in diameter. And he said, moreover, this is the resemblance throughout the earth. And behold, there was lifted up a talent of lead. And in Hebrew, it's literally a measurement, a talent of lead. That's what it says. Lead was something that was known in those days. It says the same thing in the Septuagint in Greek, talentov milibu. And it says, it's lifted up a talent of lead, and this is a fire that sits or is positioned in the midst of this flying ephah. So he sees an evil fire offering encased in lead inside a flying container, 34 and a half feet long, 5.5 feet in diameter. This is an asha. It's a fire offering. And he said this is wickedness. What is this? That's why we diagram sentences. That's why we need to know to whom and where the relative pronouns relate. This evil fire, this is wickedness. This fire is evil. This is an evil fire in a flying container that is encased in a sphere around a kikar, as it says in Hebrew, of lead. And he cast it, the fire, into the midst of the flying container, and he put the weight of lead upon the mouth, the opening thereof. Then I lifted up my eyes. Okay, and so now you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This is the exact dimensions of a Scud missile. 34 and a half feet long, 5.5 feet in diameter. It has an evil fire offering in it. And what is it going to do? It is going to incinerate entire buildings, including the wood and the stone, and as it says, it's going to remain in the house. There is a deadly residue. It's going to kill people. I am going to bring this forth.